Everybody knows you can make a quick and dirty pop filter out of some nylons and a coat hanger, but what if you want to make something slightly more durable? You need two metal hoops. They should be between 8 and 10 centimeters wide or 3 to 4 inches wide. One hoop may be a fixed size, but must be the correct final size. The other must be adjustable, like the hose clamps shown here. The adjustable hoop must have a range from the correct final size towards the small end, up to a much larger size. We'll talk about why in a minute. Hose clamps are available at most hardware stores. A good strong epoxy glue available at any hardware store. Cork from a wine bottle or similar. One metal coat hanger which you'll unbend and use for the wire. And lastly, a pair of nylon stockings. The color isn't important, they can be used or new. Now as you can see, these circular hose clamps, I'm having to use a model that I've actually used to repair a drum as example, are adjustable. They can be made larger and smaller within a given range, much like a belt. The buckle, in this case, is a screw adjustable cylinder. When you turn the screw one direction, the loop gets larger. When you turn the screw the other direction, the loop gets smaller. When you tighten these metal hoops, you end up with part of the metal strap sticking out past the belt buckle, essentially, just like you do on a real belt. We are going to use this part, this tail, and it's very important that you have a bunch of it sticking out past the end of the loop. That's why you need a hoop that is quite a bit larger than the final size, because you need a lot of that extra metal part sticking out. So here we've taken the adjustable hoop, adjusted it so that it is the same diameter as the fixed hoop, and then taking the remaining extra bits that stick out past what we're calling the belt buckle, we bend it over at a 45-degree angle so that it goes away from the hoop towards the back. You can see that in the photo here. This is where I've bent the tail past the adjustment nut to form a perpendicular line going back from the hoop. And I've epoxied that down so that it's really strong and really held in place firmly. This isn't going anywhere. Then you take the fixed hoop that we talked about before and also epoxy that to the tail of the adjustable hoop about 3 centimeters or so behind it at most. Epoxy is strong, and a good metal epoxy should hold that fairly well, but don't go nuts with it. I'm also considering Velcro. Notice all these little crossbars in the adjustable hoop's tail back here. I've levered them apart using a screwdriver so that I could weave the coat hanger wire in between them, forming an attachment point. This was difficult because the metal is quite strong, but the resulting attachment point is also quite strong. I then added epoxy glue to really lock everything into place. You'll also notice that the tail is a little folded over on one side back here. That was an accident. It didn't hurt anything, but it doesn't help anything either. Now that the rings are all glued together and the glue is dry, and I didn't take video of that, and I really should have, I'm sorry, we want to add some reinforcement to the other end. We've attached the coat hanger to the two rings that we also glued together with epoxy before. That comes down to a cork. We're using a cork because a cork is round-ish and fits very well into a standard microphone clip. When you pick your cork, again, make sure it fits snugly into a microphone clip. What we're doing here is, after having drilled a hole through the cork to run the coat hanger through, we're going to put washers on either end of the cork around the holes so that the cork doesn't get beat up as badly by use in the studio, because we'll be moving this thing around a lot. Epoxy is just a kind of glue that comes in two separate parts. The two separate parts are in the same container, which makes it really easy to measure out. This particular epoxy comes in a plunger where you push on the far end and both parts come out at the same time. And basically all you do is draw a little line of the two components. You push on the back, and that's kind of hard because this one's pretty stiff, but that's not a big deal. You just squeeze it until you start seeing both the yellow and the clear come out. And you're going to want a disposable container for this. I made something out of aluminum foil. Anyway, once you start squeezing it, you get these lines. You don't need very much. And you get about the same amount of both colors. It doesn't have to be exact. As long as you're close, that's good enough. Then you can mix it together with a toothpick, and it will get cloudy. And when it's cloudy, that means it's ready to start using. You apply it just like any other glue. There's nothing special about that. And most epoxies, like this epoxy, you have an hour to work with it after you've mixed it. So you don't have to rush like you have to do with super glue, and it's very strong. Now that we've mixed our epoxy, and it's a nice cloudy, consistent color, we're going back to our cork. Now I'm going to try to do this by myself, so this is a little tricky. But all we're going to do is lift the washer out of the way, and I can't do that with one hand. Yay! I'm going to try something clever and put this down here. Now I know this is a little dark, but what we have is our cork with our washer, and we just lift the washer out of the way. Apply the epoxy with a toothpick to the cork, and then let the washer back down. Tap it down a little bit. We've got some fairly slow setting epoxy here, so we have some time. Then we're going to lift the cork. Remember, we have time to work with this because it's slow setting epoxy. And we have another washer down here, and we'll apply glue as well to this washer. Push it up against the cork, and then push them both down against the hook in the coat hanger. And what that does is it holds the washer in place while the glue sets. Don't worry too much about getting this glue on your hands. I know I said don't put the epoxy in anything that you want again later, but we have long working epoxy, so we have about an hour to wash our hands off. Then we just leave it there for a day. 24 hours is the correct set time for epoxy. I know that sounds like forever, but that's really the only reason this project takes more than about an hour is because you have to wait for glue to dry. So at this point we're ready to put on the hosiery, which is to say the nylon mesh, which is to say the pop stopper. When you cut off the end of the leg of the hosiery, you may have a sewn seam at the end. That's normal. If you do, you want to make sure that you spread that apart with your fingers as much as you can and have it going between your fingers, for the reason that when you then put that onto the hoop and bring the hosiery up like so, the seaming is along the hoop itself and not in the way of the sound. You want to use hosiery that is sheer and does not present any obstruction to the actual sound, just an obstruction to the p and other plosive noises that end up as thuds on your microphone. Repeat this process exactly the same way for the second ring. Now, once you have it around the ring, you'll want to snip some of the hosiery away, here like so, coming down, but not all the way to the ring, on both sides. What you're doing is creating enough room that you can pull the hosiery up around the attachment points and make a nice tight knot at the top that spreads the tension of the hosiery evenly, so you get a nice even bit of tension across this entire surface, which means that you don't have thick areas in the hose, which you want to avoid. Then you just tie it however you want to. This one I'll need to trim a little more, but I'm not going to do that on camera because that will take too long. So that's the final product. If you try it, let me know how it turns out. This is a brand new design. I've just built it and I haven't really put it through its paces yet. If you try it and get good results or bad results, let me know. Remember when using it, if you are bending it to position it, don't bend the rigid metal tail. Bend the coat hanger instead. That's why it's there. That and to make it easier to attach to the cork. Thanks, good luck. I hope you can get some use out of one you build, and let me know and visit the website crimeandtheforcesofevil.com.